Welcome everybody. I'm glad you decided to attend. I think you're just going to it's pretty informal, I guess. It's just a question and answer session, I guess, for you folks and us. If you don't all know, this is Commissioner Huber, Commissioner Urban, Commissioner Todd, Commissioner Wagner, and I'm sorry.
I'm Shane Kirsch. I'm the Director of Ambulance Services for Upton County Health EMS and Wyoming Regional EMS.
I've only met 10 times.
That's okay.
I'm struggling with that. So, what this has been months now in the making, but Mr. Kurtz brought in front of us an opportunity, and some other folks showed up too. Basically, the EMS services, as some of you know, are short on funds in the county. And it's starting to affect services probably to a point of you may end up waiting for an ambulance. I see a lot of you folks are in that business, so you already know that. There's a state statute created in 2023 that allows us as a board of commissioners to create an ambulance district. It either can be countywide, it can be sections of the county. I mean, currently right now, the discussion has just been countywide so far, not breaking it into a single part of the county. And the reason for that is Upton's ambulance has really come a long way in comparison in the last couple of years through a lot of hard work, I assume. But they seem to be holding their own, and I'm sure financially they could always use help, or probably in many different ways, but Newcastle and Weston County currently pays Campbell County, I don't know what Newcastle pays, but
Combined, it's around $135,000 a year.
to have Campbell County provide EMS services, and they're providing it not only in Newcastle, it's countywide. I don't know how often you run up here, or out in the county.
Primarily it's in Newcastle, but we do backfill Upton EMS, and we will cover anywhere in Weston County. We also have mutual aid agreements with all of the surrounding counties, and we cover the area of Custer Highlands. We do get a $2,500 a year subsidy from Custer Ambulance District to cover that portion of Highlands Range.
So that money isn't probably enough to remain the status quo into the future. So what the option is with this statute that was done in 2023, and I don't mean to talk all the time, you guys got something?
You're really doing a good job.
We as a board can form a district and start the process of appointing board members. It's like I think no less than 5 and no more than 9, I think is the verbiage of the statute. It's been a couple months since I've read it, sorry. But once that board is created by the county commissioners, that board then does investigatory work to see potentially what kind of funding the county would need, not the county, I'm sorry, that district would need to help fund the ambulance services in Weston County. If they decide that we need $500,000, well, they may not be able to get that. It all depends on what our mills look like. But they can then petition to be on the ballot for 2 mills, I believe. No more than 4 mills. I think they originally applied for 2.
I think you can force 2 and we vote on 2.
Yeah, then if it's passed by voters, 2 mills will be always current. Then they can go out, every election, they go out and they ask for an additional 2 mills. So they're only guaranteed 2 mills, but if the voters deem they want to give 4 mills, they can get 4 mills. But the second 2 mills has to be voted on every election.
Like a hospital district.
Yeah, it's just like with the hospital. Right now, the hospital district gets 3 mills, and they go out and ask for additional 3 mills. So they're getting funded by 6 mills right now.
When I did the math a few months back, I think it was going to cost me with my you know, your value, they're looking at the value of your property and what you're going to be taxed at. I think it was going to cost me about $80 a year in taxes. And personally, I feel like, and this is personally, that's pretty good health insurance for knowing that an ambulance might show up, being, I'm helping input that kind of money, but I understand the sides of that too. But, so I guess this little meeting, I guess, is just to gather input. If anybody has any questions or thoughts that they'd like to share with us, if you're against it, that's fine. I don't think anybody's gonna judge you. We've had a lot of people tell us they aren't crazy about it, they're worried about the taxes because their taxes are already high. And I understand that. So, but it's a good opportunity if you have something good to add or something you dislike, we'd love to hear it.
The majority of the tax money that we pay in isn't even generated by the citizens here. The pipeline companies, the railroads, the power lines, all your big corporations that have infrastructure, they pay taxes on their infrastructure. So they're actually kicking in a big portion of the mill levy, taxes that is collected by mill levy. Your big oil corporations, all the locations, they're taxed. So it seems like it's gonna be, all the burden's gonna be on the citizens of the county. It's not, it's spread over, a lot of people won't even ever use it, they don't even live in the state, just a corporation, so, that's something to keep in mind, you know, so.
I think, what was the valuation this year? It was
174, I believe.
so 2 mills, you're talking a little over $300,000.
345.
And then with that board can also assess, is it too much, and back down too, so. If it's good, yeah, well.
It's kind of a preamble for their questions. So this is based on the meeting that was at the Weston County Senior Center, a month ago or something like that. Could you explain a little bit of what Brad McKee was talking about other areas of Wyoming that don't even have a 911 service, much less ambulance? And how important that can be.
Do you mind if I field this question? All right. So a little bit of historical context for everybody. Why I decided to bring this up here a couple of years ago. I've been working with Campbell County Health since 2011. Before that, I was a fireman, and then worked my way up into the manager and director's position. So I've got a little bit of history in working in EMS and emergency response in Campbell County. I was part of the team that came into Weston County in 2021 when Roger Hesby decided to sell. And at that time, he was starting to feel the effects of a staffing problem of trying to staff an ambulance service in Newcastle. Shortly thereafter that, we started working a little bit more closely with Upton Ambulance Service. I believe the year before that or 2 years before that, Osage Ambulance actually closed down its doors because it was unsustainable. It costs about $1.1 to $1.4 million a year to staff a paramedic level ambulance 24/7, 365 days a year. So this is where we're really finding some struggles with trying to build a sustainable EMS system in Weston County. Talking with Tiffany back in 2021 and 2022, we were having some conversations about whether or not Upton EMS was going to be able to continue staffing their ambulance service as well. They were really struggling with staffing. Luckily, they had some very dedicated volunteers. Gina from Sundance, she has been an absolute godsend to you guys. She was able to get an EMT class. She was able to input, 11 EMTs into your system? 6? Okay. I think the initial class was 11, right?
Well, we have 11 students, but 6 are on the Upton ambulance.
Perfect. So she was able to get really good community involvement. What we're asking for here with the EMS taxing district in all of Weston County and with all of the constituents that live here is that, yes, there could be some benefit to a sustainable EMS service, regardless of the company that operates the ambulance system. But what we're really looking for is staff. And for the taxing district could help pay that staff. The $137,000 a year that we receive in Weston County to operate the 911 truck that we have. That, we just use that as kind of a bridge to kind of help shore up the funds that we don't make back from operations. So anytime that we transport a patient, that's where we generate a bill. So if we show up to your house, we assess you, we get your vital signs, and we don't take you to a hospital for further assessment or care, you never receive a bill for that. We have, on average, get about a 67% transport ratio, so about 67% of the time, we never generate a bill to offset that money that we spent responding to a 911 call. All of these little tiny details all kind of lead up into this big pool and big problem that we have with EMS and not being considered an essential service. To Walter's point and to Brad's point, EMS is not deemed an essential service in the state of Wyoming. So that means that there is no funding system for EMS in Wyoming. We've been working closely with the state and with the elected officials to try to either get people to understand the needs of an EMS system, especially since COVID happened, where it was really brought apparent to everyone that ICU level of care needs to be able to go from one facility to the next, and that flight services aren't always going to be the best option for them. This EMS taxing district can help shore up some of these concerns about a sustainable EMS system for the long term and really show the state level legislators that communities at the local level are doing what they can to help promote EMS where they can. Campbell County Health in 2022 lost a $3.8 million grant that we were given a due fund letter for, and the main reason that we were denied the grant after the due fund letter was given was the fact that state level legislators, the governor and the AG, deemed that local communities were not doing enough to support EMS in their own communities. So this is where the push came to be, to start working with local commissioners, city councils, not just in Weston County, but in Campbell County and the city of Gillette, and I'll be working with Sheridan as well. So, sorry for the kind of ramble, but I really felt like everybody in the room needed a little bit of background. And I apologize if I kind of went all over the place with it, but it's a pretty convoluted problem that we're trying to help solve.
Shane, do you have your tablet?
I do have my laptop.
Do you have that video that the?
Oh, yeah, the ARPA video? Yeah, so the Wyoming EMS Association partnered with AARP to put together a video, and I'll display it for you here in just a second. And it does, I think, a pretty good job outlining some of the struggles, not just in Weston County, Campbell County, Sheridan County, but all across the state of Wyoming. So let me get this pulled up.
The reason I'm bringing it up is it kind of encapsulates what we're all feeling here. And we can't add music because I can't hear you tune, so there's no, I mean, I would have hummed along with him.
That's okay, Nathan's here.
Nathan. It just adds an element there that is it's very informative, and it does draw attention to the fact that there are places that have no 911 ambulance attention. And so we just would like you to listen to this.
That's all right.
Nobody's looking at you or anything.
And IT always works when you're under the gun.
Right, Nate? Work for you.
I will say as well, this comes at a really good time, I feel like, for Weston County. For the past year, I've been trying to promote an EMS needs assessment for not just Weston County, but for Campbell County and Sheridan County as well. We just finished with that assessment last week. We had contractors from a company called Safe Tech Solutions. They're historically the ones that have done EMS needs assessments throughout the state of Wyoming, and hopefully they'll be able to provide some good insight to the community as well, as far as like what they feel like EMS services need to look like in Weston County, Upton, Newcastle, Gillette, and Sheridan. And I'll be sure to share the findings from that. It takes about 60 days to generate their phase 1 results, and then we work with them on an implementation grant The cost of that EMS assessment was about $50,000. Campbell County Health had about a 10% cost share with that, so we ended up paying $5,000 just to get this going for everybody. So we ended up paying $5,000 just to get this going for everybody. So here's that video.
If you want to come up and watch it, how long is it?
5 minutes, 30 seconds.
5 minutes, if you feel like you can come watch it, bring a chair up. However you feel comfortable.
Somebody can have my chair.
I've taken several calls where it was a life or death situation where they found it down. I think most people just assume that EMS is an essential response that they're going to get, or they have the access to anywhere they live in the United States.
It is crazy to think that if you call an ambulance in the state of Wyoming, it is not guaranteed that one will show up.
Imagine your loved one, your spouse, your child hurt and alone and needing help and that help not coming.
EMS is technically not an essential service, meaning no one's required to pay for it. But that becomes a little bit problematic when you're struggling to fund something as important as basic as ambulance. Whereas fire and law enforcement are getting the mandated service or an essential service and have funding available. There's no such thing revolving for that, for EMS. There's services out there that are really struggling. In the last 10 years, we've seen 16 EMS services either fold or consolidate with another service. Centennial, they don't have an ambulance anymore. Those impacts have also been seen in Sheridan, in Upton, and in Newcastle. Without Gillette, the people in Newcastle have been without an ambulance. We've actually found that a very high number of people in the state have called 911 for police, fire, or EMS. We do roughly 5,000 calls, roughly 85% of our call volume is EMS. We run more calls every year than we did the previous year.
Some days, that's all we do, is that we run fire and EMS.
And there have been numerous times where everyone is busy, where we don't have an ambulance to send out to someone, so we tell them it's going to be a longer wait time.
And every second feels like an hour. So Wyoming County, we cover 42 million square miles. That's about half of what some of our northern neighbors are covering.
There's such a vast area and such open space. It could be up to 2 hours long for our EMS guys to get up there.
We do find that Wyoming has a very high concentration of older adults in rural communities. From 2010 to 2020, the number of older adults aged 16 over in the state grew by 47%, whereas the state's population as a whole only grew 2%. And so making sure that we're able to serve those folks who have been around, who've done the work, who have contributed to our communities to make them what they are, is very important to us.
You have to have more people, more equipment, for you to have times when there won't ever be a situation where an ambulance is not available. And really, there's only a few cities in the entire state that have a paid municipal service. And so we really rely quite heavily on our volunteer services as well for our more rural areas.
Historically, that's what it is. The state EMS has been volunteers. It's not a sustainable model moving forward.
They're having to have a real job. They're not getting the funding that they need to have the most up-to-date equipment. And they're not getting any type of pay or help out to maintain their certifications, those kind of things.
Quick response time is vital.
If you had a loved one that was having a heart attack or a stroke, or a little child that had fallen into a pool, you would expect EMS to be there quickly to save lives.
I had a truck driver pull over because he was having severe chest pain and he went unconscious while he was on the phone with me and he died. That was really hard knowing that if somebody had been closer, he might have had a chance.
This summer, AARP put out a survey into the field in the state of Wyoming asking some questions about EMS services. Specifically, are folks aware that EMS is a non-essential service? And we're would they be willing to pay for it? Understanding that no one, isn't required to do that right now. We found out that 8 in 10 folks who were asked did not know EMS was an essential service, but believe it should be. We also found that about 73% of people who were asked, would you be willing to pay something even as low as $5 a year, said yes. This is something that's certainly worthy of our time.
We need to solve this now. It's not something that can be pushed under the rug for the next 10 years. And get involved in your community, learn kind of some of the ins and outs of it, and don't be afraid to contact your legislators.
Go to your city council meetings, go to your commissioner meetings.
Help us help you. If you help us as first responders and EMTs and firefighters with the funding and making that stuff essential, then we can in turn help you.
We can't do this without them. The funding and other things that it would bring them if they were essential service is huge.
We try to provide the best service we can, and we appreciate the community support. We're winding tough, but we still need to support each other.
No one obviously calls the ambulance because they're having a great day.
The funding is worth a person's life. Because that's our community. Those are friends and family for all of us. It could be your life tomorrow. It could be your family's life. Anybody that you care about.
Look out for your first responders, which in turn look out for you.
Thank you.
So I guess what we need is to try to get a feeling from those in the community. Do we act now, or as soon as possible, to form a district as a board, or do we wait? It could go on the ballot next year, right, by petition. So I guess the general feeling we need to know is the community support us pushing forward the board. I don't believe it goes into collecting mills until that still has to go to a vote.
Yeah, the collection mills will have to go to voters.
So,
We have a position, we can put a board in place that can petition, get it out there on the ballot if we're going to collect.
yeah.
So if we go move forward with the district, there's no guarantee that the mill levy will pass on the voters. But at least it's in the voters' hands, it's in the people out there's hands.
Of course, you have to wait for the taxing season to happen, so you'll have to wait. If it were in August, both times are January, but if you had an election in May, which you're allowed to do, or have an election in August, you have to wait for the next taxing to establish that money, which is a good amount of time either way to establish a whole bunch of things, governance and issues like that. So you can have the foundation pretty much laid out. Then whether it fails or not, you can try again. I mean, it's not the end of the world if you fail once. You can try again. You have to wait another 6 months, but you can try again. And I think part of that issue behind that is education. We have heard for a long, long time, starting in my days. And I apologize for the tears. I'll tell you the story later, but I think part of the issue that we have is, like I said, is back to the education of telling folks, of putting it out there. Everybody wants economic growth and things like that. And if we don't have an assurance of having a good way to get to medical facilities, we are where we are. And I'm not supposed to, so I'll talk again. Go ahead.
It's kind of 3 parts here. And the first part is actually what I'd like to have addressed at the last. And that is you go ahead and tell the story about what you went through with Ted. But there is a couple things that were brought up at that last meeting that I did not know for sure. I kind of guessed at. Could you explain a little bit of the funding opportunities that could be available through grants or other areas and what that would look like possibly look like for a district if this was passed by the voters. And then I really think it's important that they hear some about what it could be like without an ambulance.
So to answer your second question, do you want me to do it? You want to? I don't care. When you have it, go ahead.
Okay, most of your grants have a match. Right now, as you guys know, you don't even have money to go after the grants because you don't have a match. At least if the mill levy passes, you have a funding mechanism in place that you can have some money to go after the grants because you can match the grants. So, I mean, the grant situation is up in the air. Nobody knows where it's going to be all of a sudden. They may just throw something out there. You have 30 days to have everything in place. Well, if you don't have any funding to match with, you're just out. At least you could have a mechanism to do the funding on a grant if they come available.
Well, if you go to the State Lands and Investment Board, what the state likes to see is that you have a vested interest in whatever you're doing. And so if you can step up to the podium after you've applied for your grant, you can step up to the podium and say, this is what the citizens of my county are willing to help pay for. The idea is that perhaps that we could get an ambulance that stayed at Weston County Hospital. That's one of the issues, or have one, whatever, wherever. I'm just throwing stuff out there, but we could maybe have a permanent ambulance, whether we can staff it or not, I don't know. But that's one of those things we don't always think about, is that would be a government entity that would be allowed to have the ability.
They're a lot more likely to help fund you if you're showing you have skin in the game.
Right, if you're willing to tax yourself
Yeah.
for that.
Good.
A couple of quick questions. One, you went to the ballot, is it a simple majority?
Yeah.
Secondly, do you have any idea how, if the funds if the funding mechanism went through, how is that distributed? In other words, is it by population percentage? How does it get divvied out?
That'd be up to the board.
Okay, so that would have to be developed if they went forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not allowed to lobby for any type of taxing, but I will tell you a story. Last February, and you all have these stories, but last February, my husband stayed home from work, he's an oil field trash, and they just stay away from there. They just don't. There's a life, and we all understand that community. The coal miners are the same way. You just have a family out there, and you just love that family. Didn't go to work, was sick to his stomach. I came out here for something. Anyway, I got back, and he was still dry heaving over garbage can. He said, I don't feel very good, which is just like the gentleman spoke about when I went tough. That's who we are. And I said, well, we're going to the ER. It was like, I love you, honey, but I can't tell her anymore. You're kidding. And when we got there, he had a CAT scan, the whole thing. And they came back and they said, unfortunately, he has a blockage in his small intestine. And you're gonna have to leave. He has to have surgery now. And, okay. He said, but I have some bad news. There's no ambulances. There's no flight for life. It was 27 below. They were all busy, gone. He had found a surgeon in Spearfish, I think it said Sundance, but it was Spearfish. And he said, I need you to need a car. I go, I've never been so terrified. I am not an EMT, I'm a car, I'm not even sure I'm good at driving a car. The road, it was windy, it's very cold. It took me an extra hour to get to Spearfish. I will tell you that the medication wore off at Sundance, and my husband said, I said to him, I'm just going to take you to Sundance Hospital. He said, what's wrong with this corner? There's not an ambulance anywhere to be found in this corner of the state. So I got on the interstate, and the passing lane was solid ice. And I said, Jesus, take the wheel, because I gotta get him. I gotta get him. And I went about 85. The Lord was looking after me. We hit the bridges. Of course, they're solid ice. And I went, that's what you want. You're taking both of us. And we got there. Angels were flying all over the place. But I will tell you, I've never been so scared in my entire life. I also will tell you that I've had people stop me and say, maybe you got there faster than any ambulance would ever got there. Now, if I had to wait, yes. But I will also tell you something else. I'm not an EMT. If his small intestine would have burst and something would have happened, I couldn't save him. I couldn't help him. It would be worth it for whoever was in that ambulance to be there with him, because it wasn't going to be me. And if something happened to him that day, while he was in there, I'm not doing it. I'm not.
The best way to know the world is to read your local paper. And I'm going to give you another hint, being a paper boy. When you get your local paper, like my mom used to do, put the front section away and go to the metro section. That's where all the great dirt is. So you read the metro section, and you will start to become so much smarter than the kids that are just academically debating, right? It'll be common sense and street smarts.
Really quick, last question. We got to welcome Secretary Nome.
So yeah, Kristi Noem was the next guest to take the stage there. But boy, again, I mean, none other than President Donald Trump is committed to a printed newspaper. I mean, as fan clubs go, I'll take that one in the whole modern political landscape. Donald Trump, Megyn Kelly, Steve Bannon, and Charlie Kirk, at least in Wyoming, I guess. Those are some pretty powerful names supporting printed newspapers.
So every one of us can come up with a story. There is somebody out there that has done the same thing. And like I said, I'm not advocating for anything. But until you step into those shoes, and you walk into an ER, and there's absolutely, for every time you have something medical happen and you're bummed about it, you be thankful about nurses and doctors. The stress, the everything. She even offered me a bed. Go just take that one.
Do you have a question, ma'am?
Well, I had a question about the grant writing. Do they accept in-kind services as part of their matching funding? For instance, if you could take all of the hours of the volunteers and put a dollar value on those, is that acceptable as part of the, we're putting this forth so you can match it? Would they accept in-kind?
I would guarantee they would take that into consideration. It probably, the question might come down to how are your tax dollars being spent to help fund this too, you know, and we give, historically, we've given money to all three ambulance services, nowhere near what Newcastle has given to their permanent services that they had. But right now, I think we're giving Campbell County 30 and Upton 15 or 10. Is it 10? 15. It used to be 10. We started adding to it just to try to help them find more volunteers. But we're happy for you guys. Probably one of the money. But yeah. Good, Mayor.
So if this district is formed, would all EMTs, both Upton and Newcastle, be paid?
No.
No.
There's a funding mechanism to do that, probably by that board, that they could decide with the funds. Upton's an interesting animal. When I was on city council here 12 years ago, we had EMT members that told us we were going to start paying and they would quit. So,
that is true. I was, but not on that end, but
yeah.
it was on the other spectrum. Yeah, we did have to.
But Oh, shoot,
Well, just to speak to your point, anyone that, and this is an interesting problem that I kind of run into. As a full-time employer of, like, there's 88, 85 EMTs on my roster. Every single one of them are paid. I have full-time staff and I have PRN staff, so they're as needed. I can't employ full-time staff and volunteers that do essentially the same job function, because then we're violating the FLSA laws. So everybody that works for Campbell County Health that works out of Newcastle, and for the most part, all of my staff rotate shifts in Gillette, shifts in Newcastle, shifts in Wright. And so we ask our staff and we pay our staff to travel into Newcastle, to travel down to Wright, to work out of Gillette, to help cover all of the system over there. But they are all paid employees.
And I will say that if the district goes into effect, I will fight tooth and nail and do everything I can to at least get my EMTs paid for taking a call. They may not be paid for being on call, but at least being on a call.
No, I think that's fair. Absolutely. I think that that's a great thing that board may be able to figure out for, if the county decides to fund it, then by all means, I mean, take care of people that are getting up at 2 in the morning, dealing with whatever they're going to do.
I would like to hear what Tiffany thinks about it. Because she's our go-to. Besides being my niece, I love her.
I've been screaming for 10 years that volunteerism is not sustainable in EMS. I think this is something we need to look into. We got a lot of great fire-spirited people right now. In 5 years, I hope they still are. But I know what I felt like after 5 years.
Do you think this would be a pretty good deal?
I think it's a darn good start. I don't think it's going to have all the answers right away, because I don't think we know all the answers.
It's a learning experience.
But it'll help enhance you guys.
Absolutely.
At other places.
So, you know, when Shane was saying it costs $1.4 million to run just one paramedic ambulance, one of the issues I've been running into lately, you don't give cold IVs to trauma patients. You just don't. It's frowned upon. However, we have always done it because we couldn't afford the equipment to heat the fluid. It was the only equipment available at the time only heated the bags of fluid, and they were only good for 2 weeks. In a hospital setting, that's fine. A hospital ambulance, you can rotate that out and run it back through because you can use it cold, you just can't reheat it. We don't run it on calls. We would just be trashing normal saline. So we never spent the money on it. They have finally come out with singular throwaway units that will heat the tubing. It will heat 200 milliliters of fluid in 1 minute, so that we don't have to give cold fluids to our trauma patients anymore. Just the setup for 2 ambulances is $10,000.
And everything that goes with EMS or fire for that matter, the price.
And like they said, would it be great if we could get a grant? Yeah, if they were out there. They're not out there.
I was just curious to see what your thought was.
So when this all first came up, you had numbers at that first meeting in Newcastle, and you and Kelly had ran numbers, and you didn't think it would be, that would work for Upton, there wouldn't be enough money?
The issue is I don't think there'd be enough money to do it fully staffed. The numbers we worked up were fully staffed, full-time, paying people. And I think unfortunately, we would just don't have enough volunteers, but at least maybe they'd be paid to take a call, right?
Well, I was just going to say at our last Newcastle meeting, J.D. Williams, representative, came. I think he learned a lot that night too. But I've always been under the assumption, maybe mad that it wasn't essential at the state level. I just couldn't understand that because in my heart, it's very essential. And he brought up the point that really made me think about it, that if the state did make it essential and took that into their hands, then they would be in charge of how everything went. There'd be statutes to follow, more like a, just like we struggle with statutes that the state has done, not necessarily fit our situation or our county. So there would be a cookie cutter type situation that they would go in and lawmakers would make statutes to run ambulance districts. And he said, I'm not sure that would be the best thing to do. And you know, I kind of agree with him. That would be something you'd really have to think about. Would we want Cheyenne in charge of how people were going to run their ambulance districts, especially in Wyoming, where every county is different? Even though we're all rural and we all have a lot in common, geographically at least, if you just want to just take that one on, everything's so different. So.
Well, there's a take on to that, like what they did to the wildlife funds, or wildfire funds. They play tag with it, you know, whatever group comes in this time, or whatever group's in here, and that you don't have anything really dependable if that comes down to politics. And honestly, anybody at a hospital could not care less if you voted Democrat in your last, or you voted Republican, or if you were an independent, or you just forgot that you wanted to vote at all. Nobody cares. And because that's really not our issue. But to take on to your point that you said also, when my husband was in there was a lot of stress when that level came up that there was not going to be an ambulance available, no flight to life, nothing, because the minus 27 below and everybody was somewhere else. The stress level for every one of those employees absolutely elevated. They couldn't, I'm going to get the term wrong, so please, I apologize, but he had a full stomach, and they were trying to get the fluid out of his. Those girls were shaking so bad because that stress level they had heard. So if you could take that away, they're human beings too. And if you don't take every single one of them, or trying to get their 125%, it worked. But they were scared, they were terrified. That's a member of their community. Could have been them. So I think that's interesting too.
Are there neighboring counties or counties in the state that run this type of model for their funding mechanism?
There's one in Goshen County, that's a Chugwater district. Johnson County has one.
Johnson County actually has a rural healthcare district, which is a little bit different than any EMS taxing district. So I apologize for stepping in, but yes, I figured Johnson County would be brought up. They voted in a rural healthcare district, which is once it's voted in, it's there for forever. They don't have to vote on it anymore. It'll be there until the government consults.
So most counties, if they're working with their ambulance providers, are funding direct up, like we're talking about.
That Chugwater one, I think, was the first in the state. I don't know, are they funded yet? Have they?
Not that I'm aware of.
So recently performed.
So I believe the ability to have the CMS taxing district came up in 2023, which is when I started bringing it up to people who would listen. I think Sweetwater County is looking into it. I know Brad McKee is pushing Kirk County. And it's interesting, across the state, there are different models of EMS services. There's hospital-based EMS services, there's fire-based EMS services, and then there's municipal-based EMS services. So it depends on where you live, on how your funding is strategized. I don't receive any taxing monies to operate in Campbell County or in Wright, or the city of Gillette, they don't pay us anything. The city of Sheridan County pays about $267,000 a year as a subsidy to operate Wyoming Regional EMS out there. And then general sales tax appropriations pay for us to have a 911 truck available in Newcastle 24/7, 365. So when we run into issues as far as like trying to transfer people in and out of Weston County Health Services, we're having to backfill that ambulance, either from our ambulance in Wright, Wyoming, or one of them out of Gillette. So that's where we run into quite a bit of an issue with not having staff that live in Newcastle. They can respond, I've got the equipment, I've got the uniforms, I can push as much training down your throat as you can handle, but I just don't have anybody that lives in Newcastle that can help out. So having a taxing district can help pay for EMT classes, it can help with training costs, it can help with all sorts of recruitment and retention that would be, I think, very important for your community to consider.
And equipment.
Equipment, I mean, an ambulance, a type 1 ambulance that we put on the street runs about 20,000 miles a year running calls. Base price on it right now for me is $330,000. It went up from $268 in 2023.
And that's not stopped.
That is just an ambulance, just a box with a chassis on it. We start talking about a cot, $23,000 with a power load system in the back of it, so we don't throw out people's backs, it's $29,000. We put a Hamilton T1 ventilator in it, it's $20,000, plus all of the different medication. Yeah, radios, that portable radio that Tiffany's got on her hip right there, it's $8,000. The radio that's in the truck in the ambulance, the dual head radio, so we can communicate with other ambulances in the hospital, that's another $8,000. I mean, none of it's cheap, and it all has to be replaced. And an ambulance is good,
But
$250,000.
we got on a grant.
2 years. From the day that you order one, if I order one from Osage today, 2 years for them to start production, and then production starts, and it takes about 6 months.
So if you guys were to do a board, would you put like EMTs, Tiffany, and people that knew what was, I mean, somebody that was familiar with what they.
So that would be a good conversation to have between Tiffany and myself. I am a firm believer of not doing a hostile takeover. If Tiffany were to ask,
I wouldn't like it.
yeah, we have a good working relationship right now. My staff come to Upton every single time that you guys call, as long as we're available, and we're happy to help out. But this is not, Campbell County Health is trying to take over an ambulance service in Upton. We're just trying to help and be supportive in whatever way that we can.
And I don't think a board that's in the best interest of the board would probably frown on that pretty fast. Everybody knows the importance of volunteer service, and but your question, Gloria, that would be up to the board. People would have to put in their application, and you just have to sort through them, and it'd be wonderful if somebody with Tiffany's experience or
Somebody experienced would
only,
apply to be on your board.
the only issue there, though, that you're gonna run into is conflict of interest.
This place is full of love. You can tell the people that like to be with old people because they really take care of you good and are very kind.
Twice a day, every day, activities, people have an organized activity that's always interesting.
Everybody loves to play bingo. We play it 3 times a week here. We also have ceramics that you can paint. Really pleasant to live here. It's a good place to be.
The only issue there, though, that you're gonna run into is conflict of interest between being on board and if you're getting a paycheck. So you gotta watch out for that kind of stuff, so.
Yeah, I would assume that it would be probably frowned upon if Tiffany or I were on the board. It would have to be a member of the community who could then reach out to us and say, hey, what do you think? And then we could all come to the table and agree on whatever decisions need to be made as far as the money spent.
Because as a recipient of these people, many times, I'm very appreciative of our EMS. And without them, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, no, Upton EMS does a great job. We have a lot to be proud of.
If Campbell County would take over the ambulance service in Upton, would Upton keep ownership of Upton's ambulances?
So the ambulances are actually owned by the town of Upton.
Right.
So, yeah, unless they sold them.
And again, I have no plans, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that Newcastle doesn't have any ambulances out there.
No, because that was a private company.
Right.
It's now a hospital based to the contract.
Not that I want that to happen, I'm just checking.
Yeah, we have no plans of taking over Upton EMS. They have not asked us to look into it. We're just happy to help them however we can. And they help us on occasion. I mean, they really do. You know, if we're unavailable, they take patients to Moorcroft, and then my Gillette crews will come. We really try to utilize this as a system. I mean, Northeast Wyoming is made up of a lot of small communities with a lot of windshield time in between them. And there's not a lot of services that can help each other out. The services that are here, we do have to work very closely together.
But with disinformation too, in one past meeting, people think that landowners that have 50,000 acres out here are going to be charged some absolute astronomical amount of money for their share of what they might get for services. Well, that's not the case. I mean, that property is valued at egg use. It's so insignificant compared to your home here in town, and they can write it off if they're using it as egg use. So, I mean, I don't see it as everybody's gonna have to pay something if you want. And I'm perfectly okay with that decision being made if we feel that that's what the community wants. And, what I wanna know is there anything that really is pulling your reins back from anybody? Because that's what I need to hear the most of. Because what I've heard prior to this is mostly probably in favor, but if there's something that scares you, I'd love to hear that too.
Could you explain to us a little bit how you're looking at assessing fees, or it's going to be a tax on property, or?
So what would be, what would happen is we would, by resolution, it's a process we've had to go through. We have that public hearing, and that's already basically taken place, and then we have to wait 3 months or 6 months? 60 days before we take any action on that. We've been well over that. We're probably at 4 months now since we had that initial public hearing. But the reason we kind of pump the brakes a little bit is because we want to make sure we make the right decision, and if we're going to do this by resolution and hear everybody out. Well, if we do it by resolution, we then appoint the board, the 5 to 9 members, I think it is. You don't have to have 9, you can just make it 5. And then they will, over the course of the next year roughly, assess, well, it might not take them a year. If they wanted to go to have a special election, we could. But that board then will assess the needs of the county, similar to what we do as a board when we're assessing what needs the county needs with your tax dollars that we get in the mills that you pay to the county. So they may say, you know what, let's figure out a way to pay Upton ambulance volunteers for their time that they're getting called out and going and checking on something. They may decide that that's not in the best interest. It would be that board that would make those decisions. And I think, with a good board, hopefully everybody can walk away with a little bit of a smile on their face, with some additional help and funding of some end. Right now, it's not real kosher, but yeah.
If it came to forming a board, how would those board members be chosen? One board.
By the Florida County Commissioners, and it would be it's similar if you were to apply to be on the Manor board.
Okay, so people would apply to be on the board, it's not through an election or anything?
No, and which changes a few things for this board.
But it will be through election. No, it won't be through election. That board will remain similar to other boards in the county where we appoint them. They serve X amount of years and then they rotate out or can reserve if they so want to and are reappointed.
gives the Board of County Commissioners a little different oversight on it. And so if they deem to have too much in reserves or things like that, we can pull back and say, hey, maybe you're taxing you're taxing your taxpayers a little too much and you're storing this. I mean, there's been fire districts and stuff that sometimes I'm not accusing anybody, but that's why the law came through, is that sometimes they were getting too much and not spending it away. In fact, that one fire district was loaning money.
I think there's a cemetery district in Gillette that has like $40 million.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's to help prevent that kind of stuff, you know, which this would never generate remotely anywhere near that.
You got to remember, one of Weston County mills equals 20 of our mills equal one of Campbell County's mills. So that's a big difference, you know. Yeah, 'cause like, if we had 2 mills of Campbell County's, well, it'd be a big deal. But 2 mills of our money here, of our assessed value, is not that great.
And I'll go back to the board, putting people on the board. So one of the things you probably not, I'm going to break up on, haven't heard a lot about is the Weston County Landfill District. So what slowly evolved is that they didn't get their first chance at a mill. That's their opportunity. And not through voting, but just a timing issue. So as they were going, they just developed and had a plan and laid their structure out and then put it back before the voters. And so that was a quiet, and I think the same thing could happen with an EMS district. That quiet foundation building can happen before you, and I pardon the pun, but before you pull the trigger for the tax type of thing. And I don't mean that, you know, so you have to go find them. But,
I'd add on to that, the biggest success of the solid waste board is education. Going out and visit with people in front of other boards and groups, educate them on where we're headed if we don't do something for ourselves, you know. Because right now, we're keeping our garbage in Weston County instead of hauling to Casper, which is a lot cheaper here than it is hauling that far. So the big thing, if it moves forward and it goes into front of the mill, that goes in front of the voters, is education, you know. Don't be afraid to tell people, and if it passes, it's not a Band-Aid and it's fixed everything. It's a piece of electrical tape on the wall. But it's a start.
It's going to be a process.
But it's a start.
Because EMS is always evolving too, so it's always going to be a process.
Quick question for the commissioners, which I think would be good information to have. How many special districts do you guys manage already? And then how many mills are available for Weston County and how many are you accounted for?
we take all of them. So you get 12 by state statute.
Okay.
We utilize all of them.
You're already using all 12?
We're one of the, I mean, Campbell County is quite fortunate in the fact they don't have to, and same with Teton County, Sublette County for a little while with that too. But we do assess. Our 12.
Okay. So if we enacted an EMS taxing district, would that, the mills that we would go after, would that be in addition to the 12 you're already going, or already assessing?
Yeah, those are some outside.
So all the different taxing districts in the county have a different share of the mills. Some of them are at 77, some of them are at 72. Yep, depending on where you live and what it would do in your district, it would bump you up 2 more mills in your district. So.
And that's the interesting thing that we're talking about, is necessarily not always making a Weston County wide. Right. Is like the fire district doesn't include Newcastle, doesn't include Upton, either does it? And so, right, so either city, so it's the outlying areas. So it could also be opposite. It could be just Upton, or it could be just Newcastle. Now, of course, that's gonna par that down quite considerably, but I mean, that's part of this whole interesting thing of how this could all play out. Just like Osage landfill was just this little piece, right? You know, that district was this little piece just in the middle of Weston County. So.
Another question that I hadn't heard yet on this. you were talking about there being so much paid to service Custer Highlands. Let's say like J.D. Williams, he doesn't live in Weston County, almost. What about the people that are closer to the services in Weston County than, say, Lusk or Wright or something like that? With this districting, is it possible that this districting would, if the board so chose to do this, would they be able to service those type of areas, like Custer Highlands, J.D. Williams, or other people that live right on the other side, in another county?
I'll refer back to those two, but I don't think there's an ambulance that would say, no, I'm not going to show up.
There's a lot of mutual aid agreements that are here in place.
And the district, a district would be able to account for some of that then?
I don't necessarily know that a district would account for those particular issues. I know it gets pretty dicey when you start spending one county's tax dollars in another county.
I get that.
So Weston County can't just go spend a whole bunch of money in Campbell County to do Weston County things. So we have to be very careful, at least with the Campbell County Health Site, because we do receive funds as a hospital district in Campbell County to make sure that those funds don't quite bleed over into Weston County. So that's where we're really trying to be as sustainable as we can from operations. Now, the CMS taxing district helps bridge that gap between what I budget to operate in Newcastle and what we need to survive and hit that break-even point. If we hit the break-even point, we're pretty happy. Healthcare here recently has never been that break-even point unless you work for a private for-profit service that gets to pick and choose what customers you take in.
Yeah.
You call 911, we're going. So we're taking all numbers, whether or not you have the ability to pay.
But remember, Wyoming's just one big small town with really long streets. And so, the idea is that those Campbell County people could be in Weston County, we could be in Campbell County, we could be traveling, we could be anywhere. And the minute that our car goes off there, or we, God forbid, anything bad happens, the license plate doesn't mean anything. And so I think that whole idea, the cost of a life, is what you're willing to pay.
And if the taxing district does get enacted, that does not necessarily mean that there's going to be a pile of money immediately available to the EMS taxing district, right? There's not just a sudden infusion of cash that's going to just generate the $40 million that the cemetery district did overnight. That takes quite a bit of time for it to build up a bank account that the board could then draw from to help sustain operations. So just something to consider with that as well.
Just like landfill.
And it'll be on the ballot every year or two, or every 2 years to.
Every 4 years.
Every 4 years.
You go after the additional 2.
You have to get to 2, yeah.
If it passes, they will always get the 2 mills.
Yeah.
Then every 4 years, you have to go ask for the additional 2 mills.
Now, if this passes, like when these guys do so many fundraisers and does our ambulances get that money, or does it go into?
I guess I don't know, because the fire
That's
district is
just-
also, I think the fundraiser would either have to be done by the EMS district or just Upton Volunteer Fire Department.
That's what.
So-
Yeah, they have to do that. We could.
Yes.
I think you have to
It would stay
have friends
there.
of the Upton ambulance or the friends of the Newcastle. It'd be that separate thing where their only obligation is toward whatever that board is. And then they get the funding and then they can explain that.
Yeah.
Whereas so many times we run into issues that has to go back into the county.
Yeah, that's
And
why I
then
was
we have
wondering
to
if it all
distribute. Right.
went, if we could, their ambulances that belong to Upton, if we can.
There's ways around that wall. Legal
But
ways
you did
around
not hear anything about that from this guy over here.
In addition to the weekly printed version of the newsletter journal, we also promote our community and share important information on our award-winning website, newslj.com, and in our weekly email newsletter, Nuke Now. We also connect with readers through various social media platforms and invite you to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can even take a look at a recent meeting of the City Council, School Board, or County Commission on our YouTube channel. We do hope that you will go to newslj.com and subscribe today, and we look forward to making all of our great content available to you. But regardless of your level of support, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for doing your part to preserve a free and independent local press.
One thing I don't know, what happens if Manor using that statute, what happens if everything falls up to that district? Can we can dissolve, right?
I think I read that.
I believe you can.
Yeah, they just, nobody wants to be on the board, it's just total disarray. Can't be resolved.
Then what happens with the standing room?
I believe you have to redistribute it.
Yeah.
Interesting process. I'm
That
not
would
sure.
be a nightmare.
I'm not sure you would have Carol on your Christmas list anymore. I mean, she was that's weird. Yeah.
And I've heard people argue, their point was, well, only property owners are gonna pay for this, and that's not fair. Well, renters don't pay anything, that's not, the renter won't pay anything, property owner still pays taxes on whatever rental is being rented out. So that's not a really good argument anymore to me. I had to think about it for a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, yeah, what about this?
In Campbell County's case, they transport that renter. That renter's getting billed. Correct. So they are paying for it. We assume they pay their part.
That is one good point too you just brought up. I do believe if the district is formed, you will have, Upton Ambulance will have to charge for services.
And I'm gonna be quite honest, I'm looking at doing it anyways, because we can't keep shelling out 10 grand for equipment.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we have a wonderful community that donates to us wonderfully. But yeah, there's a lot of equipment we have is way too expensive.
Yeah.
So the service doesn't go now, no cost, 100% free.
And I will say from a company that does charge for its services, on average, we get about, if we go by the hospital standard, we get about 48 cents on the dollar back. So if we charge you $100, you get 48. That's what insurance will pay. It depends. Medicare, Medicaid, they're about 38 cents on the dollar. TRICARE is 99% of that. Blue Cross Blue Shield out of Campbell County was like 85%. So the contractual percentages are pretty rough. So,
Which was another, one of the 12 years ago or whatever, however long ago it was, if we started charging for services, we were gonna lose EMS. And I get it, and they were that devoted to doing it for the community, but in some juncture, it's just not sustainable.
And not one of them is here.
Yeah, they're not.
Yeah, none of them
Yeah.
haven't been for quite a while.
But, so, I guess,
What's your biggest fear if this goes through? I mean,
If it
that's-
goes through,
Yeah.
create a
I mean, I want to hear the negative side, so we can try to, squash their feelings, try to get everybody educated. Works, if there's nothing against us, or against the district, we've done a good job of educating.
A knowledgeable board.
What's that?
A knowledgeable board.
And I think that's very fair.
Yep.
I think that's very fair.
I don't see any downside for the commissioners authorizing the creation of the board, because the board still has to go out and make it happen. So if you don't have a good board, they're not really good at getting the message across, then the voters say, no, we don't want that service, okay, then you don't have that service. But I don't see an immediate downside to it. It only seems to have potential for benefit, what I look at.
So with all the talk we've had for the last couple of years, concerning property tax and all this elevation and all of that. I think the very first meeting that we had, that was the icing on the top, and everybody was so, I don't want them, we're fighting to get them cut. Interesting enough, we're going through our first year of having those 25% cuts. We're not quite feeling the pinch yet. The 50%, if it passes, is going to be a very interesting thing for the county to go through, and the 2 minutes.
And that's another reason I'm thinking about charging.
So you're going to have that interesting, pretty soon those services that you were expected, that you were paying for, cannot be paid anymore. And there might be an interesting development of what'll happen with, when I first got to be a commissioner, there was a commissioner, I won't name names, but he said every county road should be a toll. You pay for your, you pay to be on that road. Goodness, that's gonna go over. Wow. And it did, went over like a lead balloon. But you know, you get to a point where somebody says something to you and you say, where is the threshold that you're willing to pay for the services that you're getting? And when you stop and you think about, can I afford 2 snow plows? Or my road to be plowed twice? You know, if we were all HOAs, and the funding is now cut, and the prices keep going up, where is your threshold? Because then we may come to that. And that's a scary, scary thing in some instances, because you've got school bus routes, you got people, and you all know some of those people that go on, it's not gonna happen, I'm doing it. You know, and there's that one little divot in the county road where you're going, well, so what goes around there? He's not going to, she's not going to. But an interesting conversation.
Well, and that's what I wanted too, and make it as a board decision. Can they offer an opt-in, opt-out option?
There are some boards that can. There were, like in the Osage, you could opt out of being in the taxing district.
You opted into the district. But when the Osage Landfill District done, they opted into it. Because there was somebody about 9-10 miles away from that Osage district, there's a little red dot, but there's a taxation district up there, they opted in to the Osage district.
Now, we'd have to look further into that, because there used to be something you could opt out.
Because you could split the county in half, and not have Weston County, west of Osage, be part of the district. I mean, it's that simple.
Well, you could do it north and south.
Yeah. It's, but I think I'm more interested in helping my neighbor than hurting my neighbor, along with hopefully getting some help from my neighbor when needed.
So, you know what I heard from feedback, is everybody's pretty much is like, make it countywide, you know, and then let that board figure out how they distribute funds, which way it goes. You know.
I was just going back to Newcastle's meeting back in April when, yes, there was a lot of pushback about, I don't want our land, and everybody's all pay for money. Well, then you opt out and we won't come.
Yeah. That was a big topic that night with the ag industry of our taxes. Last session, but they paid 4.12% of all the county property taxes, ag only paid 4.12%. So that didn't hold much water.
It's the house you have on.
Yep. Because that house
And
is
the
not ag.
outbuildings you have on that land.
Yep.
And your sons and daughters' houses that you have on that land. That's where you start to look and go, cha-ching, maybe, I don't know. But.
And you know, we're a poor county. Yes. Are we number one?
Nope.
We're not number one, we're number two. We're always in the bottom three. We're in the bottom.
Now we're at 5%.
Each got tied up with number.
But you know, it weighs heavy on us. And the money we didn't have this year, you know, like Marty said, money we're maybe not gonna have next time. We're gonna start having to cut things more and more and more. And I wish we had enough money to make everybody happy. That's my dream. But we want, we don't want to lose things like this service. That's my personal opinion. But I've been in a little bit of a situation like Marty, and some of you have, and you appreciate that service when it's there. So.
Well, and I'll be the first to say, I'm a limited government gal, and I don't like taxes any more than the next person, but I also see it from the EMS side, and it's healthcare, and the prices and stuff are astronomical. There's nothing I can do about that, so hopefully, yeah, if you want an ambulance, you'll help us fund that ambulance.
So, sorry, what's your name, sir?
My name?
Yeah.
Kevin Sales.
Good. The point you brought up of forming the district alone is probably, I think, the best argument there is about it. That district can then make that decision to say, this county really needs it, or they might come to find out that it's just there's nothing there, or the voters maybe shut it down. But I mean, if we move forward, if that's the will of the people, and for the most part, that's kind of what I've heard. I mean, there's been some people against it for sure. But let the board do the research and show the proof that it's a good benefit to the county, and then take it to the tax, or to the voters.
Political director of Trump, we're minerally challenged.
No, we gave up half of us to Campbell County.
We didn't.
It's kind little souls, and so did Upton County, and formed the county over there. Goodness gracious, what we're losing.
Almost right on the county line.
They had where the coal mines is coming in, yeah, right there.
Well, Weston County was a pretty lovely place. I mean, it's pretty phenomenal. I mean, we had 2 presidents, stop lying. Not that we want any, yeah, no.
So I guess we did this at a new council meeting. I asked just a community that was there, just a quick show of hands. I mean, if you want to see us move forward with to the next step, maybe raise your hand. If you don't raise your hand.
I say unanimous.
It was that way. It was very much that way even at that April meeting in Newcastle. It was probably 75% favors.
And if anybody's being told that this means that the board gets your health records, that is absolutely not true.
We did hear that. But, the Board of County Commissioners is going to need your health records because the ministers would have to give information to the Board of Commissioners. But, no,
Yeah, so
we're not going to see your information.
Yeah, just to stop that whole thing, there's a portion of that state statute that says something about
If the board does
data.
billing.
It's data.
Yes.
And it's just data.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not.
He's in here for hernia and operation.
Now, you want to know, just ask me, I'll tell you.
Yeah, it's not when the fat wraps around your small intestines and decides to strangulate it, your wife is going, what just happened?
It would be building, if that board for some reason was the building entity
Yes.
for the ambulance service.
But I would assume CCH will continue billing to their biller and up to.
Yeah, so there's a whole layout there right now, we're not into the medical.
Absolutely.
We just
Well,
want
I
to
think if they do charge a lot of, what are called nuisance calls,
You would think, but no, that's not.
but if they have to pay, they won't call.
You'd be surprised.
I know a lot of them that they would not pay. If they had to pay an ambulance to come to the house, they would not pay.
And that could be a swear like about Title 25, but it won't be.
Yeah.
I got swear at, it's right
And
there.
Denver, my brother he had fallen 3 times, and they told him the last time, you call us again, we're putting him in a nursing home, because you can't take care of him. And so they had to buy one of those, he called it his ass jack. So that those hydraulic lifts to get him up off the floor. But that's
You
exactly.
understand this is on tape, right?
No, it's not, it's live.
Yeah, but the AMTs down there didn't mess around. They said, this is not something we have people, if somebody who's dying of a heart attack and we're here picking you up, you've got to realize this, you have to do something different after 3 times.
Well, imagine being in a world where it's a competition, whoever gets there first. We'd never really, can you imagine turning someone's way and go?
No.
They got there first, congratulations, you win. We wouldn't even.
We didn't bat an eye, but that's what they did, they just said, you're not capable of being home, you need to be somewhere so we don't have to come every time.
On the bottom line. Well, we certainly appreciate you all coming out.
Yeah, you guys,
Always.
Not trying to run anybody out here, but you got any other questions? And if not, yes, sir.
So Gillette Fire Department has paid volunteers. What would it take for us to get to that point?
That's what that board would probably consider. My assumption is, and I don't know this, and I would lean heavily as a county commissioner living here in Upton to ensure that there is a member or 2 from this side of the county sitting on that board. That it's not just a Newcastle group of folks sitting on that board solely. I think that's a countywide tax, and it needs to be countywide represented. And that board could then, and I'm not saying a group of Newcastle folks, but not do that, but at least there might be some, if you got some of your own skin in the game, sitting down here and up and try to decide a way to help everybody in the county, including Campbell County, fund their system and assist this and the county up to volunteer, whether, and maybe that's up to you folks as a volunteer board or your volunteer group to decide what's most important to us. Is it paying X, Y, or Z to our volunteers on top of what extra equipment we need, or what can we do to try to figure that out? And that board would be the place, your sounding board, for bargaining for some of that funding.
That'd be a discussion to be had between Upton Ambulance and that board.
And then, of course, that board could also go to Board of County Commissioners and have provider service agreements that is being established right now. But those type of things that would add to education, perhaps payment, whatever that contractual idea would be. So, there's some different funding out there, not that we're rich, because we're not. But a portion of the 1% sales tax, that's how we divide it out, is to social services. And while I call that a social service, I'm not necessarily meaning, that. But I think you understand what I'm saying.
I think you'd have a pretty good argument as a volunteer board to go in there and say, we're not asking for a lot, but getting out of bed in the middle of the night and spending X amount of hours per week, I would like to see some sort of return on my investment of my time.
Well, and if it's an incentive to get more people, why would you not? If you knew that you were going out, and I'm not putting that cloud over it, that we're making money, get people, because that's not that's not gonna be the heart of you anyway, but that we do value your time, and we're grateful for your time.
350 hours last month.
If I could 90, I would. That's
13 people, 350 hours.
Wow.
We're, and I know a lot of people don't say thank you, but thank you for every, and like I said with my other, right, until you're in those shoes, it's a weird place to be. My husband had a good life. I mean, he's still alive, but I'm just saying. He lived. Good, bad, or different, but I'm grateful. But a child, what if we were a bird? A bird. I can't. None of us. We all find strength in wherever we can get it. We do what we have to do. And we will do what we have to do. 'Cause that's who we are.
How many hours of your personal time you put into the dump? I mean, it's like the board.
I've been on that solid waste board for 9 years, and it took 8.5 years before we turned the shovels full of dirt. You know,
It's a long time, it's a process.
But we appreciate that too.
oh, I know.
It's just, everybody's, there's so many people in this community that volunteer for these boards, and just like you volunteer your time, I think, more than anybody would want to. But, it's, even this board for this district is gonna have a lot of hours that they're gonna have to put into it, it's gonna be unpaid.
Yeah, see, I learned a lot more about garbage than I ever thought I would.
I'll bet.
Here's a blast.
You gotta worry about airports and seagulls when you have a landfill. They have to be at least 5 miles away from an airport because of seagulls. And believe it, we got seagulls.
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming, let's go something else.
Last thing I have for the group is Campbell County Health will be hosting a free EMT class. We've got 20 free spots for an EMT class. I'm really hoping we can get some involvement from Weston County for the city of Newcastle. It's sponsored in part by our participation in the SAMHSA grant. So we're trying to get some more EMTs in Weston County. If I can get enough EMTs in Weston County, I would love to be able to host a classroom in Newcastle, at our Newcastle-based location to ease up some of the travel restrictions that some people might have. So if you guys have any questions about that,
Is that
feel free to
basic
reach out.
level?
Yeah, basic level, yep.
Could you tell people where to reach out for this?
Yeah, so my email is Shane, SHANE.Kirsch, KIRSCH, at cchwio.org. Or you can get on the Campbell County Health website at cchwio.org. There's training classes on there as well. We also get some grant opportunities through the Wyoming Department of Workforce, the Wyoming Workforce Development Grants. So there's a lot of free education out there. If you guys are interested or have a family that's interested in becoming an EMT, please reach out. We're happy to help walk you through that.
Thank you, Shane.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Appreciate it.